So this is my A-level project titled Hunting. So first I have a mood board which just looks at different colours and textures. I then look at my first collection called Highland Rake by Alexander McQueen. So I created a ruffle sample and also a tartan with lace sample inspired by his collection. I then looked at a second Alexander McQueen collection looking at Widows of Culloden. So first I created a small kind of lace ruffle sample inspired by this dress and also other garments. I also did some drawings and incorporated real fuzz and feathers, as that sort of, he uses lots of feathers within his collection. I then looked into tartan again, working with tartan on the bias. I also created a small tartan inspired drawing. I created some ruffles on a mannequin and also looked at some tartan design ideas. I then looked into Widows of Culloden, looking specifically at feathers. So I created a small pheasant feather sample, including guinea fowl feathers on tweed. I also made some small design drawings and some small feather drawings. I then took quite a few primary images of horses out hunting and also hounds, as well as some primary drawings. I then layered together small pheasant feathers and then developed this into a drawing by drawing and cutting out. I then painted this. This painting was then enlarged onto A3. I then used sublimation print to turn it into a fabric print. Next I looked at horses' plaits and I was looking at the swirls within the horses' plaits. I sort of developed this kind of swirly pattern. I also did some more secondary drawings, just looking at pheasant feathers. I then developed a printed design of hounds, so I started by taking a photo that I'd taken out hunting of these hounds. I then took away the background and repeated it on Photoshop to create this pattern. I also included our Huntmaster. I then printed this onto a slightly darker fabric, but it was more sort of tweedy, but I didn't like this as it wasn't as vibrant. You can see the colours as well. For work experience, I worked with a company called Butler Stewart, who look at tweed coats and just general wear. I developed some different ideas and designs from this, and also some small sketches, and I was able to take quite a few primary images, which gave me an idea of different colourways. I developed a jet pocket sample. I then visited the artist Daniel Crane in Lincolnshire. He does lots of different hunt prints. I also took some primary images of my friends out hunting and jumping. From these I was able to develop some printed samples using sublimation inks. I then embroidered into some of them. I did these inspired by the painting Three Breaths Held, which is here. Carry on with those similar techniques, I used a blotching colour, sort of all down in different colours as I drew it here. I then used that same sort of swirly pattern from the plaits in here. This is my prototype, and I think it gives a really nice texture and the colours really interact well. I also tried printing on a lighter fabric, however I don't think it went as well as the colours aren't as vibrant. I wanted to develop another potential lining print, so I tried to develop a more sort of traditional print with lots of different aspects of hunting. I drew some different drawings and then using Photoshop combined them all together to create this print and then printed it onto a satin-like fabric. Jen Buckley works with watercolours in a sort of expressionate way, looking at different colours within pheasants and also pheasants in flight. I had a go at this myself, which I quite enjoyed. From those colours I was then able to develop an oil pastel pheasant, and I used the colours that she used, lots of vibrant blues and oranges. I then decided to develop this into a printed sample with this pheasant, and again I used the swirly pattern from the plaits. I looked at Susan Hotchkiss, who works with felt. She does obviously a similar swirly pattern again. I then developed a felted sample with needles of a pheasant head. I did the same thing here, but instead I created my own felt fabric by rolling it with hessian and soapy water, so all the fibres eventually merged. I then embroidered into it. I also cut holes out. I made the circles with a zigzag stitch, and I just tried different ways of doing that with these smaller samples here, including adding ribbon. I then developed this sample, so the tweed has holes cut out and then it exposes a vibrant felt fabric underneath. And this is a felted pheasant sample. I did some trend analysis and also looked at Barbour, as they're a very relevant country brand, as well as the Chanel collection using that houndstooth tweed. Through the history of hunting, I was able to understand sort of traditional shapes within country clothing, where I developed some new design drawings. I visited Scotland and picked up some Harris tweed. I then used the Scottish landscape as my background and developed some different design drawings. Here and also here. I then developed some slightly more in detailed drawings, as these were more of my ideas and could potentially be my final garment. I came up with the final design and did a final design drawing looking at the colours within a Holland Cooper jacket. I found a Harris tweed that was similar to this, and this is what I ended up using in my final product. I then created two digital design final design drawings using Photoshop, but also collaging real fabrics. I then did some more primary drawings of pheasant feathers, and then secondary drawings of pheasants in flight. This is my Widows of Culloden inspired layered guinea fowl feathered sort of sample with a tweed-like fabric. And this is my pheasant who incorporates the bold colours but also that swirly pattern. And my Susan Hotchkiss inspired tweed and felt fabric. I then created a pheasant sample using felting and also real pheasant feathers, which gives it quite a natural look. I ended up using this design on the back of my garment. This is my textured design drawing, which again uses the colours, but also real fabric to give it more of a pop. I did the same again, but this one was digital, and I used Photoshop to put the tweed onto the coat. Again, though, I did use real fabric as well, and this is the design that I ended up using for the bottom panels of my real coat, and I also incorporated a feather cuff. Next, I moved on to Japan. So this is my mood board. It incorporates my primary images of koi carp and also secondary images, including the Gucci 2016 Fall collection, which looks at kind of Japanese ideas and inspiration. This sort of looks like a kimono. I visited a local garden centre to draw some primary images of koi carp. And from there, I was able to develop some samples. So I started off with a really simple lino print. I then cut the original kind of lino print shape of the fish, and until it got smaller and smaller, and I added different colours to add that textured look. I then also added some embroidery to give the effect of scales, and also some gold sequins to give that shimmering effect. I then used trace paper to shade all the areas of the drawing, so this one. So I just left these dark scales, which gave a really interesting effect, and for the background I used screen printing pigment and a squeegee and just dragged different colours along the board. From the fish drawings, I developed some different design ideas, again looking at these shapes. I then developed a small padded sample of that. And then a final design drawing incorporating different elements of all of those drawings. I then visited the V&A. I looked at the Kimono Kyoto to Catwalk collections. These are primary and secondary images. I then developed some design drawings. Again, these have that traditional kimono shape with koi carp colours. From there, I decided to look at bamboo, so incorporating primary images from Kew Gardens of Bamboo and also Gucci 2016 Fall collection, and also just some drawings to understand the shape of bamboo. This is a lino printed bamboo fabric background. And then I layered and collaged coloured paper and also bamboo to create this, which I then printed onto a fabric. I then did that same technique again, but with bigger pieces of paper. I used blocks and also stripes, and then I printed onto this with a lino print of bamboo. These I then photocopied and then transferred onto this sort of silky fabric and then lino printed onto the top of that. I think this one came out better as the colours are more vibrant. I also visited Kew Garden to look at orchids, so I did some primary drawings. These drawings use a black fine liner and then also water to kind of add a more soft effect. I also incorporated some primary images. This is then the sample I created following on from orchids. It involves orange and yellow inks for the main part of the orchid, and then I use free machine embroidery to create the orchid shape and also the stem. Moving on from that, I looked at paper manipulation. I cut up paper and folded and sort of twisted paper in different ways, applied it to a mannequin and also a model. From this I was able to create some really abstract and interesting shapes and also some new drawings. I also looked at the idea of intertwined shapes following on from that, where I used magazine cuttings of different materials and shapes to create these abstract design ideas of potential garments. I did a similar concept with fabric, so fabric manipulation with calico on a mannequin again, which also gave me different ideas and inspiration for some design development drawings. For my GCSE project, I looked at the 60s, including Jimi Hendrix. So I created this gorgeous printed coat. So I used this orange and pink suede fabric as my main body of the coat, and then I used a screen print method to create this flower print, and I used the same print for my lining but on a lighter silky fabric with much more vibrant pigments for the flowers.